Hi there, and welcome to Introduction to LLM, RAG, and Agentic AI. This is an introductory tutorial on some key AI concepts presented in a high-level, easy-to-understand way without going into all the technical details. The topics that we'll cover are as follows. We'll start by going through a brief introduction to LLMs and how it works, then into how it can be enhanced with Retrieval Augmented Generation, otherwise known as RAG. And then in the following section, we'll talk a little bit about how these concepts are being applied for real-world use cases through the use of Agentic AI. So let's just jump into it. We'll start with our introduction to LLMs. So what is an LLM? Well, the short story is effectively that it's an AI that can understand and generate human language. And the long story is that it's an AI model based on neural network architecture that plays a critical role in natural language processing that allows machines to be able to interpret and understand human language. So in this section, we'll break that down a little bit so we can understand more of how that actually works. Before we go into that though, some of the key capabilities that LLMs are good for are text generation. They're good at creating coherent text based on prompts and refinement. It's good at working with large text and being able to work with large amounts of scale and text inputs. And it's good at translating. It can convert languages with pretty high accuracy. So at its core, LLM is a sequence prediction machine. It's trying to predict what's most likely to appear next. So here's a simple example on the right-hand side here. It's raining cats and blank. So for most of us, we are pretty familiar with this idiom, and we can sort of infer that, well, based on this idiom, dogs is probably the blank that goes in there. For the AI, that's also what it's trying to do. It can infer that this is a common idiom and fills in the blank, much like how we would do it. So that's a very basic example of sequence prediction. Now, the complex prediction is probably a little bit more similar to your typical interaction with an AI. When you're having a conversation, all it's really doing is trying to predict what comes next to your prompt. So for example, if you ask, what's the weather like in Ottawa? The LLM is trying to infer, okay, in situations where someone's asking about the weather, what's the most common or typical response to that? And that would be you answer with what the weather is. And if someone were to say thanks to your response, then the LLM kind of thinks, okay, what's the most common or expected response to something like thanks? Oh, you're welcome. So that's how it would reply. So basically, the response to what you're telling it is the blank that the LLM is trying to fill in. So now the question is, how does it do that? So earlier I did say this is going to be a high-level, easy to understand way, but bear with me, I'm going to go a little bit into the technical side of this. So we mentioned earlier about neural networks. LLMs generally use a specific type of neural network called a transformer. So a neural network is essentially a computational system that has multiple neuron layers and tries to do the prediction of the output based on the input. So you can kind of think of it like an orchestra. Within the orchestra, the musicians represent a neuron, and the LLM is the conductor that uses those neurons to create that output. So if we dig a little bit deeper, how it works is that, as I mentioned, it's a system that's made up of neuron layers. So they self-modify themselves based on the large amounts of training data, and they learn to predict better outputs after seeing many inputs. And each individual neuron takes in inputs and performs math functions to evaluate the input and then passes it next to the next function. And it just keeps going until it gets to the output. So based on the diagram on the right here, you can see that the input layer takes in the input, it passes it to all the hidden layers in the middle that are doing all these different functions and progressively influencing each other to get a better understanding of the input and predict the next output that comes. And then finally, it outputs the prediction to the output layer. So I mentioned that the LLMs use a special type of neural network called a transformer. So this is a architecture that allows every word to be aware of each other word in a passage. So if in much like a human community, they're self-organizing, so each person is aware of their role in the community and other people's roles. So in this architecture, each word sort of understands itself and wants to understand what other words do. So for example, in isolation, if you were just to look at the word John or his, that really doesn't tell you anything. And if you just looked at the word bank, again, it doesn't tell you anything about the sentence. But the more you start to understand the context around it, once you know that, okay, this sentence sort of has bank, it has wants, it has cash, and this is sort of what each word means. And then once you put it together, you sort of understand that, oh, okay, this person wants his bank to do this thing. So that's roughly how transformers work. Now, we've talked about math functions a lot, and you might be wondering, okay, but how do words fit into that? So what LLMs use are actually tokens, which are what they use to refer to words or word fragments. And tokens are basically encoded as these vector embeddings, which are coordinates in this abstract sense of space. And so AI can compare words by basically comparing the space between them. So if you look at the diagram on the right here, you can see that bananas is sort of plotted at this specific coordinate in this abstract space. And you can see roughly nearby it, green apple and pears also appears in their own different coordinates. But you can see how they're a little bit close to each other because it understands that, these are types of fruits. And on the other side over here, ships and boats are plotted very close together as well, because it can understand that they're very similar concepts. So an example of an embedding would be, if we look at this picture of a creature, a human would probably say, oh, that's a cat. Whereas an LLM would say all of this, which I'm not going to bother to read out. But you can sort of see the difference in, even though an LLM can process and understand that of this creature, it doesn't really understand it the same way that a human would understand it. So there are a lot of research being done into embeddings today. The question that might be on your mind is, how are these tokens turned into these vector dimensions? How does it know where to plot them? And no one on Earth actually knows, because it's all done through the neural network, which is kind of a black box from what I understand. So it's not actually meant to be human readable, although the research that's being done is trying to understand more about how these get a better understanding of how that's actually working. And another research question might be how to mitigate biases, because the interesting thing is these vectors are built from the way that we as humans use words. It's not just coming out of thin air. So it does actually end up reflecting how humans tend to use words and meaning. So for example, there are some vector models where if you look at doctor minus man plus woman, it yields nurse instead of doctor. So mitigating these types of biases is an area of active research that's being done. So that's the basics of an LLM. So the next thing to go into is Retrieval Augmented Generation, aka RAG. So what is RAG? Basically, your brain uses information from the past to match with the current context to make a decision. You have the knowledge and context around you. And by default, LLM doesn't have that context. So what RAG does is it's able to enhance the model's responses and what it knows by giving it external sources of information to help understand things better. And that makes it generate better responses. So as an example, if you were to ask it a question like, what is the smallest planet in the Milky Way? With RAG, it can retrieve the data from the most up-to-date trustworthy sources, from the internet, from anywhere that it's been provided, and it can answer, oh, okay, Mercury is the smallest planet. Whereas if you didn't have RAG, and if your LLM was programmed, maybe a couple years ago, or however long ago this was, I don't actually remember, it might generate a response that's actually pretty out of date because it's only referencing its internal knowledge base, which is dated to the time that it was originally trained. So in some cases like this, it might give you an outdated response, like to the question of the smallest planet, it might say Pluto, which we all know is no longer the case. So this diagram is just a little bit of a visual just to show exactly how RAG works. Effectively, it goes from here, starting with the user sending the query to, let's use Solace Chat as an example of like the service in the middle. It basically references a vector database, which we'll go into later, to retrieve the context-specific information using RAG. And then it sends the query with this additional context to the LLM. And then the LLM is able to formulate its response from the query as well as the additional context and its own internal trainings and returns a response. So in the middle here, the service does some post-processing and then finally returns the response to the user. So some of the advantages of RAG over traditional LLM is that it combines external knowledge with the model's own internal knowledge, so that it has more up-to-date information. It's a lot easier to update LLMs with new data without having to retrain the actual model, which can take a lot of time, and it's actually very expensive as well. So it's not very practical. And it generally does provide more factually accurate responses compared to LLMs, which reduces the likelihood of hallucinations, which I'm sure we're all familiar with if you used AI, where it just makes things up because it doesn't actually know. And finally, it has better transparency because it can actually provide you sources for the information that it's giving you rather than being kind of a black box, because the model's training is not usually exposed to the end user. So going into hallucinations a little bit, these are some of the ways that it actually works to reduce hallucinations. One, it's actually fetching relevant data, which I mentioned earlier, instead of only relying on its own internal knowledge base, which could be outdated. Two, it can do contextual validation, so it can actually check multiple sources and then cross-check them with each other to see that if it's accurate because it's showing up in multiple places. Three, it can perform dynamic querying to retrieve precise information to the user's request. And four, it applies checks after it generates the response to make sure that it can correct any inaccuracies before sending to the user. So some of the primary use cases for RAG is typically around enhancing domain-specific knowledge. So for example, if you're doing research, LLMs can, you can provide it with research documents. It'll look at your question and then give the context to the LLM to generate the output with the research documents as the context. So you'll get information that's relevant to those research and it won't be hallucinated. Another one is financial workflows. You can connect the your LLM to real-time market info, and then it can generate financial analysis and reports that are actually grounded in fact when someone wants to ask it about investment advice. That way it won't give you outdated investment advice from the 2000s, let's say, if you're asking it for it in 2025. And finally, customer support is another good use case. When giving support to customers, a lot of times customer support agents need to reference their specific internal policies or documents to answer their questions. And so LLMs can help actually reference those knowledge bases to find and give the answers correctly. So as we talked about earlier, words in the human language are encoded as vector embeddings so that the LLM can actually understand it. Vector databases are basically special types of databases that stores these vectors so that LLMs can retrieve and search through them efficiently. So while it's not required for RAG, RAG does typically use vector databases to store the data that it's referencing for a couple of reasons. And on the right-hand side here, I've just put a couple of the most commonly used vector databases as of today. Here are some of the benefits of vectorization. So the first one is similarity searching. We talked earlier about how LLMs understand human language not as words as we understand it, but as coordinates in an abstract space, and different words could be plotted close together in that abstract space based on their meaning. So that enables similarity search, which is finding vectors that are close to the original input and searching for things that are similar instead of needing explicit keyword parameters. So taking e-commerce as the example, if I were to search for a blue t-shirt, in a traditional database, it could only return me things that are explicitly tagged with blue t-shirt. Whereas if I were to take advantage of vectors and vectorization, it could help me search for things that are similar to a blue t-shirt, like a blue sweater or a blue tank top. And it can do this in a fast and cost-efficient way by using techniques like algorithms and partitioning to enable that. And finally, it's scalable because vector databases are optimized to handle massive amounts of high-dimensional embeddings. So going into some examples of AI products that use RAG, Perplexity is a search engine that can search the web for a variety of external sources to generate a response about the topic that the user is asking about. So if I were to ask it a question about the Puppy Bowl in 2025, which is not something you'd expect an LLM model to be trained on, Perplexity can actually reach out to the web and find information for me about it and return it to me in an easy to understand way. Another example of an AI product that uses RAG is Claude Projects, which is a little bit more transparent to the user. They actually allow you to upload your own documents to tell Claude chats to reference while generating responses for your queries. So that way you can get specialized and customized responses based on your specific information. So then we head into the last section here, which is Agentic AI. Thus far, we talked about LLMs and we've talked about RAG, which are both powerful technology, but many people today aren't just using a basic LLM, they're starting to use what we call agents. And the idea of agentic AI is to really have these sets of autonomous systems with agents that can make decisions and act with minimal human involvement. So what agents are like kind of specialized helpers in this AI system. They each have their own set of skills and knowledge. For example, one might be good at searching the web, another one is trained or given the tools to create images, and then another one is sort of specialized in answering questions. And each of them can do one thing, but one thing very well, is kind of the idea there. So an agent is built off of an LLM at its core, but it's given additional tools and instructions that make it viable for a specific real-world purpose. So on the right here, I've shown an anatomy of an agent, and this is just what's coming from OpenAI. Different providers, I believe, may have slightly different ways of structuring or architecting their agents, but I think these are a couple of the common ones that are consistent, where you have some sort of instructions. So these are kind of prompts that tell the agent how it behaves, what it is, and what it should do. The model, so again, the LLM model that the agent is built off of and actually uses to accomplish its tasks. Different models do have different things they're good at. So for example, one model might be especially good at doing research and analyzing large amounts of data. Another model might be much more geared towards technical concepts and doing coding, for example. So being able to choose the right model for your agent is usually key. And then finally, agents are given tools that it has access to accomplish its actions. So these can come built in, depending on the framework you use, or it can be executing custom Python functions that you code yourself for your agent. And to go into the agent mesh, imagine it's a team of these agents, the AI helpers that basically work together to solve problems. So instead of working alone, you have to talk to a specific agent and it can only do one thing. These agents can share information, they can build in each other, and they're all connected to each other. So this diagram here is representing some gateways, the ways that information can enter the agent mesh, the orchestrator in the middle that basically takes in that information and figures out what to do with it, like which agents it should call. And down here you can see the agents it has access to. So one example of a flow through the agent mesh would be, for example, the gateway. We start with a gateway. So again, it's a communication endpoint that handles communication between the user and the system. So for an example, a user might ask a question to Solace Chat about a Jira ticket in Slack. And then that input then goes into the orchestrator, which then processes the question and determines that, okay, it needs to use the Jira agent to answer the question. Then it reaches out to the agent, in this case the Jira agent, which would find the relevant Jira ticket based on the question and then read the description and then provide a response to answer the user's question. So that is Agentic AI in a very quick nutshell. And so that's the end of my presentation as well. Again, like I mentioned, this is an introductory tutorial, so the concepts I covered here are at a very high level. If you're interested in any of them, I do encourage you to continue researching, maybe try out Perplexity and see how it can help you. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching.